March 16th is not just another date, it is a threshold. And if you have felt something tightening in your chest, shifting in your dreams, or quietly rearranging itself beneath the surface of your life, you must understand what is happening now. Jupiter has turned direct, and the energy that has been held back for months is no longer waiting behind the door. It is moving. The lock has given way. The silence is breaking. And for 3 zodiac signs in particular, this is not a small energetic improvement. This is the moment the universe stops testing your patience and starts revealing what all of that waiting was actually preparing you for. Because what makes this moment so powerful is not only that Jupiter, the planet of expansion, faith, growth, blessing, and higher timing, has finally resumed forward motion. It is that this movement arrives after a long emotional season that forced you inward. It forced you to question what safety really means. It forced you to sit with the parts of your life that looked stable from the outside but did not feel aligned on the inside. It forced you to confront the distance between what you told yourself you could live with and what your spirit has quietly been begging you to change. This is why March 16th feels bigger than a transit. It feels like crossing a threshold you have been standing in front of for months, holding your breath, sensing that something was coming, but not yet able to see it clearly. And that is the first truth of this cosmic rebirth. The threshold is not only something opening in front of you, it is something you are becoming strong enough to cross. Jupiter direct does not simply hand you luck. It restores motion where your soul has been under spiritual review. It brings forward momentum to the places where life has been asking for honesty. Not surface honesty, not performance. Real honesty. The kind that changes your relationships, your financial choices, your boundaries, and your willingness to stop betraying your deeper knowing just to keep the peace. You may have felt this review period in ways you could not explain to anyone else. You may have felt more emotional than usual, but not dramatic. More tired than usual, but not physically sick. More aware of what is missing, but unable to name it out loud. There may have been moments where you looked at your life and thought, this cannot be all there is. Moments when people's words sounded flatter than before. Moments when your usual distractions stopped working. Moments when your spirit became louder than your routine. That was not failure. That was not stagnation. That was the universe bringing you to the threshold and making sure you did not cross it unconsciously. Because unconscious crossing is how people walk into another cycle that looks different but feels the same. And this time, that is not what is being offered to you. March 16th carries rebirth energy because Jupiter direct is not reviving the old version of your life. It is reactivating the part of you that knows you cannot shrink your truth any longer. The threshold in front of you is asking one question. Now that you can see more clearly, what will you no longer pretend not to know? That question touches everything. It touches your emotional world first. You may notice sudden waves of clarity now. Not necessarily loud revelations, but quiet certainty. The kind that arrives when your nervous system finally stops fighting reality. You may feel yourself less interested in chasing, forcing, explaining, or overextending. You may feel a new resistance to emotional confusion. That is important, because one of the clearest signs that Jupiter has begun moving forward again is that your tolerance for misalignment drops. The threshold does not reward confusion. It exposes it. And once exposed, you cannot go back to calling a lesson a home. This is also why some viewers will feel strangely emotional over the next several days. Not because something is wrong, but because something is thawing. Tears may come faster. Memories may surface unexpectedly. A certain conversation from months ago may suddenly make sense. A disappointment you thought you were over may reveal its deeper lesson. You may even feel grief and relief in the same breath. That is what rebirth often feels like at the threshold. One version of you is dissolving while another is stepping forward. And even when the new chapter is correct, the crossing still asks you to release what kept you company in the dark. Mentally, this can feel like coming out of a fog. You may notice that thoughts which kept looping now begin to settle into answers. Decisions that felt impossible may suddenly seem obvious. The threshold sharpens perception. Jupiter direct does not force your next step, but it lights up the path enough for self-deception to become uncomfortable. This is especially true if you have been waiting for a sign from another person, a job, a financial outcome, or a dream that seemed delayed for no reason. The reason was not punishment. The reason was timing. Some doors do not open until you are finally willing to leave the hallway. And that is what makes this portal powerful. It is not just about what comes in. It is about what you stop carrying through. Now, let us go deeper, because this shift is not only spiritual, it is practical. It is emotional. It is embodied. It shows up in the very real architecture of your life, in the realm of money and abundance. Jupiter direct marks a major shift in how you relate to receiving. During the retrograde, many people were not only experiencing delays in income, plans, approvals, negotiations, or progress, they were confronting the emotional story underneath those delays. The fear of outgrowing others, the habit of undercharging, the guilt around wanting more, the pattern of confusing scarcity with humility. The threshold now asks you to release those distortions. Because abundance cannot enter where your nervous system still treats expansion like a threat. You may begin noticing where you have been spending from emotion rather than intention. realization, you may see more clearly where your energy leaks have been. Maybe it is not only money, maybe it is time, labor, caretaking, emotional rescue, or constant availability. Jupiter direct begins restoring flow, but it also restores discernment. And that means your abundance grows more powerfully when you stop feeding what drains you. This is not the moment to throw yourself into impulsive risk just because the energy feels exciting. This is the moment to choose long-term growth over short-term validation. Protect the threshold. Not everything deserves to cross into your next chapter just because it is familiar. For some of you, money breakthroughs may begin as clarity before they begin as cash. A clearer strategy, a better offer, a more honest budget, a stronger willingness to say no, a realization that the path you kept chasing was never the aligned one. That too is abundance. Jupiter's gifts are often misunderstood because people expect fireworks, but true expansion frequently arrives first as self-trust. Once that locks into place, the outer world starts responding differently. This transit also speaks powerfully to work and purpose. If you have felt disconnected from what you are doing, direct motion can begin showing you where your real growth wants to happen. That may look like renewed momentum in a stalled project. It may look like a conversation that finally moves. It may look like realizing that the version of success you inherited no longer fits the person you have become. The threshold is not only about getting more, it is about becoming more honest about what actually nourishes you. Now, let us bring the body into this, because the body always knows when the soul is near a threshold. Sleep patterns may be unusual right now. Some of you may sleep heavily, as if your body is catching up on a long, energetic burden. Others may wake in the middle of the night with racing thoughts, sudden insight, or a strange pressure in the chest. Hydration matters more than usual. Rest matters more than usual. Gentle movement matters more than usual. When a rebirth transit is active, the body often processes what the mind cannot yet fully explain. You may notice tension in the throat if there are truths you have not spoken, tightness in the stomach if you are standing near a decision you know you cannot postpone much longer, fatigue if your spirit has been carrying too much invisible weight. Random waves of calm may also arrive, and you should not dismiss them. Sometimes peace is the sign. Sometimes your body relaxes before your life catches up, because on a deep level it recognizes that the threshold is finally open. Protect your nervous system in these days. Reduce overstimulation where you can. Do not drown your intuition in noise. Eat in a way that grounds you. Step outside. Get sunlight. Pay attention to how your body responds to certain people, spaces, and commitments. Under Jupiter direct, the body becomes less willing to negotiate with environments that keep you fragmented. Rebirth is not only emotional, it is biological. Your system wants coherence now, and nowhere will that become more obvious than in relationships and communication. This is one of the strongest areas of the transit, because once Jupiter moves forward, truth in relationships becomes harder to ignore. The threshold reveals who meets you with steadiness and who only meets you when you are convenient. It reveals who brings clarity and who survives by keeping you uncertain. It reveals who can hold emotional honesty and who panics when the surface script stops working. You must watch behavior now more than words. That is one of the most important instructions of this portal. Who shows up with consistency? Who becomes clearer, kinder, more grounded, more available? And who becomes evasive, delayed, emotionally slippery, defensive, or vague the moment depth is required? The threshold has a way of separating potential from reality. Some people will step closer. Some will fall away. Both are information. Do not romanticize either. If you are in a committed connection, this transit can bring renewal through honesty. A conversation that has been postponed may now need to happen. A deeper truth about needs, boundaries, support, timing, or emotional labor may come forward. This does not automatically mean endings. In many cases, it means maturity. Jupiter direct can restore movement and love when both people are willing to meet the moment with humility and truth. But if only one person is doing the emotional lifting, that imbalance may become impossible to unsee. If you are single, the threshold is equally important. You are not being asked to chase the next spark. You are being asked to notice what your spirit no longer wants to entertain. Mixed signals, inconsistent effort, performative affection, emotionally unavailable people who borrow your energy but never offer real safety. This transit can awaken a new standard in you, and that standard may initially feel lonely only because it is unfamiliar. But do not mistake unfamiliar for wrong. The threshold often feels quieter at first because fewer illusions are allowed through it. Family dynamics may also shift under this energy. Old emotional roles can become unbearable now. The fixer, the one who keeps peace at personal cost, the one who absorbs everyone's pain and calls it love, Jupiter direct gives you an opportunity to step out of inherited emotional contracts. That does not require cruelty. It requires truth. You can love people without continuing patterns that keep you small. Communication now should be simple, honest, and grounded. Say less, but mean it. Do not oversell your worth. Do not over-explain your boundaries. Do not beg for clarity from people who benefit from your confusion. The threshold respects clean energy. Let your words be rooted. Let your silence be intentional. Let your standards do more talking than your fear. So what should you actually do with this transit? First, slow down enough to recognize what is really opening. Not every invitation is your portal. Not every emotional surge is a command. Sit with what feels clear rather than what feels merely intense. The threshold can attract projection if you are desperate for movement. So stay honest with yourself. Choose what feels aligned, not just what relieves discomfort fastest. Second, have one honest conversation you have been postponing, not 10. 1. Say the thing with maturity. Ask the direct question. Name the need. Clarify the boundary. You do not need to force an outcome. You need to stop living in the emotional hallway. Third, look at your finances with more honesty than drama. Protect what you are building. Remove one leak. Delay one unnecessary expense. Revise one strategy. The threshold favors intentional expansion. Fourth, stop chasing what repeatedly requires you to abandon yourself. Whether this is a person, an outcome, a timeline, or an old identity, the message is the same. If you must shrink to keep it, it cannot come through the threshold with you. Fifth, make space for your body to process. Journal, walk, rest. Cry if you need to. Let the rebirth be real enough to land in the body, not just in your imagination. Now, let us move into the 3 zodiac signs most affected. Because for these signs, the threshold is not abstract. It is personal. Cancer, this is your threshold in the most intimate way. You may feel as though life has been rearranging you from the inside out for months. You have been forced to confront your relationship with self-protection, belonging, family, vulnerability, and emotional truth. There have been moments when you wanted immediate movement, but the universe kept slowing you down because your rebirth was not supposed to be superficial. It was supposed to reach your roots. And now, as Jupiter moves forward, you begin to feel the difference. Your intuition sharpens. Your confidence returns in a quieter, cleaner form. You do not need to prove as much. You do not need to explain your softness to people who only understand armor. The threshold for you is self-trust. The door opening now is the one that lets you stop apologizing for your depth. In love, you will see more clearly who protects your heart and who only visits it. In money, you are being asked to believe that emotional alignment is not separate from material growth. Your next chapter does not begin when everyone understands you. It begins when you finally understand yourself enough to stop negotiating with what drains you. Scorpio, your threshold is made of truth. And whether you wanted this level of clarity or not, it is here now. The last several months may have brought internal pressure, spiritual heaviness, unexpected distance, or a silent reevaluation of what you actually believe about your future. You may have outgrown people without wanting to admit it. You may have felt that old strategies were no longer working, but the new way had not yet revealed itself. This direct motion changes that. Jupiter begins moving you out of psychic waiting and into sharper purpose. But first you must stop confusing intensity with alignment. That is the lesson at your threshold. Not everything that consumes you is meant for you. Not everything that pulls emotion out of you is sacred. Some things are simply unresolved. As the portal opens, you are being asked to choose what deepens your peace, not only what activates your instincts. In relationships, this may expose a bond that has become more draining than transformative. In work, this may restore momentum where fear had disguised itself as strategy. In your spirit, this is a rebirth of trust. You do not need to know every step before crossing. You need to know what you refuse to carry with you. Pisces, your threshold is the return of creative and emotional life force. If you have felt dull, disconnected, heart heavy, or unsure whether your joy was ever coming back in the same way? This transit begins changing the atmosphere. You have been in a slow interior season, one that demanded emotional discernment. It asked you to separate fantasy from intuition, hope from avoidance, compassion from self-abandonment. That has not been easy for you, but it has been sacred. And now, the threshold appears as movement, a renewed desire, a creative spark, a feeling that maybe your future is not closed, only delayed. Jupiter direct opens a space for your heart to breathe again, but it asks for one thing in return. Stop calling your sensitivity weakness. It is your instrument. It is also your responsibility. In love, you are being shown whether someone can actually meet your emotional depth or only enjoys being adored by it. In finances, you are being called to respect your gifts enough to structure them. In your daily life, the rebirth is this. Your softness is no longer allowed to live without boundaries. That is how your next chapter becomes real instead of remaining a beautiful idea. And even if your sign was not named, this threshold still belongs to you in some form. Because Jupiter direct does not only affect 3 signs, it changes the emotional weather for everyone. It restores movement to the places where growth has been delayed, not denied. It reminds you that a pause is not proof of failure. It reminds you that clarity often comes after endurance. It reminds you that some of the most important doors in life do not open when you knock louder. They open when you are finally ready to enter without betraying yourself. So if things feel different now, trust that. If you feel calmer, trust that. If you feel more emotional, trust that too. If a relationship suddenly reveals its truth, do not call that bad luck. If a financial pattern becomes impossible to ignore, do not call that punishment. If your body asks for more rest, more silence, more honesty, listen. The threshold is intelligent. It does not open randomly. It opens when your soul has learned enough from waiting. March 16th carries the frequency of rebirth because the movement has already begun. The wheel is turning. The water is no longer still. The life that could not move in the same way before is beginning to move now. But remember this, the portal is powerful, yes. The blessing is real, yes. The expansion is available, yes. But what determines the quality of what enters? Your next chapter is what you choose to leave behind on the threshold. Leave. Behind the need to be chosen by people who cannot. Recognize your value. Leave behind the habit of calling delay. Rejection, leave behind the story that says, safety must come from shrinking. Leave behind the hunger to decode what consistent people make obvious. Leave behind the belief that pain is proof of depth. Leave behind every version of yourself that learned to survive by staying in rooms your spirit had already outgrown. This is where everything changes, not because the universe suddenly became generous, but because you are finally able to meet the opening with new eyes. Jupiter direct is the signal. The threshold is the symbol. And your rebirth is the decision. So cross carefully. Cross. Consciously, cross with your self-respect. Intact, cross with your intuition louder than your fear. Cross knowing that what is meant for your next chapter will not require the death of your truth to enter. The door is open now. The energy is moving. The waiting season is over. And if you've been